And so that has started to happen in that country where there's some really good wine out there and there's some turpentine. And you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to 10 Minute Travels. With me as always is Phil Freeman.
And with me as always is Shane Patrick. And today we're going to talk about hunting truffles in Romania. And if you want to hear more about that or anything else at 10 Minute Travels, just go to 10minutetravels.com.
Let's get right to it, shall we?
That leads us to you asked about the cooking. Some people have been to, you've been to a fancy restaurant and maybe someone will offer you truffles if you're in a big city type restaurant and it's in season, maybe over your pasta. Would you like some truffle shavings? And if you've ever seen that happen, what they do is they come out with a truffle and a grinder and a scale, and they'll weigh the truffle, grind onto your pasta until you say, thank you, that's good. And then they'll weigh the truffle again, and they add that to your bill. And we're talking in, tenths of a gram or whatever, because it's cost money to get them. There aren't very many. They're hard to find. And they also are only good for about 5 to 7 days. Then they just don't have any taste anymore. And so a lot of people, that's their experience with truffles. But a better thing to do with them is capture that essence before it goes bye-bye. And one way to do that is you can take a container and you fill it full of truffle shavings, carve them off with your mushroom knife or any sort of sharp blade as thinly as you can. Put a piece of wax paper down and put cheese or butter, something with high fat content on the paper. Cover that, leave the container closed up, and that aroma, those aromatics are fat soluble. So they'll go into the butter or into the cheese, and then it stays suspended there. So you can have truffle butter that's 5 years old if it's been in the freezer, and it'll be delicious. So we did that with some. So we were, showing up to breakfast with our own butter to slather on our rolls and whatnot. And then we also, Dan and I, the mycologist's husband, he's a real fungi. We saw some cheese in a display case, and we were trying to ask this woman, and I said, "Vorbits inglesa, do you speak English?" And she said no, and she was looking for a coworker who was on lunch or smoking a cigarette or something. Not there. So we pantomimed, "Can we eat some of that cheese?" She's like, she's telling us you got to buy it, and we're like, "Oh, we just want a taste to see what it is, And that finally we got through to each other, and she gave us a little tiny bit on a knife, and it was goat cheese. Sometimes goat cheese is pretty barnyardy. This was really nice. And it was about $4 for a kilogram. And in the States, goat cheese is pretty expensive, even if it's not good. So we bought a bunch of goat cheese and infused that with the truffles. Pretty darn fun.
And then an excellent dinner to follow, I would take it, after the truffle.
Yeah. We had the options were 3, 5, or 7 courses, when we booked this in July or whatever. And we obviously went for 7 because why wouldn't you? And so they all came with a wine pairing as well. And the very first course set the tone. And like I said, this place where we ate, it's been around since 1248. So definitely has some character, some ambiance of its own. But it's also like in a farmyard, so we were expecting peasant food, which does not mean bad. It means simple, right? And hearty typically. And the very first thing that came out was our server. She spoke really good English and So she told us that it was going to be egg custard with candied bacon and parsley. And she called it a amuse-bouche, which I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It means a fun bite in French. And so it came served in an eggshell. It was egg custard in the eggshell on like you would serve a soft-boiled egg on, with a little bit of Romanian sparkling wine. And I'm not the biggest fan of sparkling wine. I've had good and I've had bad, and they're both kind of to me. But the people in our group, a few of them are way into sparkling wines and said that was a good one. And then every course that we had came with another wine from right down the road. And they were all pretty nice. And a couple of them were really nice. And that was the case in most of the country, that like they've been growing grapes and making wine as long as everybody else. As soon as humans figured out that was a thing, we all started doing it, right? Because that's a thing. But 20 years ago, all of their wine was just for the alcohol content, and kind of everybody doing their own thing, never exporting it or anything like that. And then, about 20 years ago, someone from the Bordeaux region of France came to Romania and said, "These are beautiful grapes you people are growing. Let me show you how to make it into beautiful wine." And so that has started to happen in that country, where there's some really good wine out there and there's some turpentine. And you never know what you're going to get, and the wine culture isn't there yet either, which is a good thing. Like the snootiness, all those bad things that come with wine, they don't exist there yet. We did a wine tasting in a cave. I don't know how old it was, but it was not a new cave. And the person who served us the wine was the person who had the best English. He was probably 17. I don't think he knew too much about wine, but whatever, who cares? When I've been to wine tastings in the past, you go from lightest, not only in color, but in flavor, up, so that if you have a heavier, robust wine first, that light, refreshing wine is going to get lost on your tongue, right? Same thing with eating ice cream or pickles, whatever. You got to start with the subtle stuff. He gave us stuff in, I don't know if it was alphabetical but it had no rhyme or reason. We had a Cab Sav that was big and heavy as any I've ever had. And that was followed by a sparkling wine that even the people that were into sparkling wine could only taste the bubbles, and that was just because they're not uppity about their wine yet. It's just for drinking. And that was really fun.
That was Shane Patrick, and we were talking about hunting for truffles in Romania. If you want to learn more about that or anything else on 10-Minute Travels that we talk about, please visit 10minutetravels.com.
And we want to remind you to make sure that your sense of humor matches your sense of adventure. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast on all the platforms.